My younger sister demanded I fund her lavish wedding, claiming she was entitled to my money. When I refused, she lured me to a dinner where lawyers waited to sue me for millions. They thought I was helpless, but then my husband handed them a single folder that destroyed their entire scheme. Before we begin today's story, we have an urgent announcement. Due to technical issues, this channel is shutting down. But don't worry, the stories continue. Please subscribe to our new channel, Daily Drip Stories. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The migraine started at the base of my skull, a dull, rhythmic thumping that synced perfectly with the blinking cursor on my monitor. It was 8:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the rest of the logistics office was dark, save for the cleaning crew moving silently through the rows of empty cubicles. I should have been home hours ago. I should have been having dinner with Carter, decompressing after a quarter that had tested every limit of my patience and my supply chain management skills. Instead, I was staring at a spreadsheet that refused to balance, rubbing my temples, when my phone vibrated violently against the mahogany desk. The screen lit up with a photo of Isabella and me from 5 years ago, back when her smile reached her eyes, before the entitlement had hardened her features into something permanent and sharp. I hesitated. We hadn't spoken in 3 weeks, not since I had gently suggested that a destination wedding in Lake Como for 300 guests might be outside her budget, considering she had been unemployed for 6 months. I slid my finger across the screen. "Hello, Bella." "I sent you the invoice," she said. No hello, no asking how I was. Just the demand, her voice tight with a mixture of anxiety and arrogance. I sighed, leaning back in my ergonomic chair, the leather creaking in the silence of the office. "Bella, we talked about this. I'm not paying the deposit for the venue. It's $25,000 just to hold the date. You and August need to set a budget you can actually afford." "We can afford it," she snapped, her voice rising an octave. "We can afford it once the family trust is sorted out. I'm just asking for an advance. Why are you being so difficult? You act like this money actually belongs to you." The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My hand tightened around the phone. "The family trust paid for your college, your first car, and the down payment on your condo, Bella. The money our parents left is gone. It's been gone for years. What I have, what this company has, is money I earned. Me, Sophie." "That's a lie," she screamed, the sound distorting through the speaker. "Mom and Dad left millions. You just hid it. You rolled it into your stupid trucking company and stole my share. August told me everything." I closed my eyes, the thumping in my head turning into a jackhammer. "August? You mean the man you've known for 4 months? He knows more about our family finances than the accountants who handled the estate. He knows how people like you operate, Sophie. He knows you're hoarding it. Look, I'm done asking. You're going to transfer the $100,000 for the wedding package by Friday, or I'm going to make sure everyone knows what a thief you are." "Is that a threat?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "It's a promise," she hissed. "Pay for my wedding or I'll ruin you." The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, the silence of the office pressing in on me. I looked at the photo on my desk, my parents, laughing on a sailboat, unaware that a car accident would take them both just 2 years later. They had left us comfortable, yes, but not wealthy. I had taken my half of the inheritance and risked everything to build this business from one van to a fleet of 200 trucks. Isabella had spent hers on trips to Bali, designer handbags, and a string of failed startups. Now she wasn't just asking for a handout, she was declaring war. I put the phone down, my hand trembling slightly. It wasn't the fear of her threats. I knew my books were clean. It was the realization that the sister I had protected, raised, and bilaid out for 15 years had finally decided that my love was less valuable than a venue deposit. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of the stress-induced ulcers I'd been treating for months. It was a physical blow that left me breathless. The drive home was a blur of highway lights and rain-streaked windows. I couldn't listen to the radio. My mind was too loud, replaying Isabella's voice over and over. Thief. Stole my share. August told me everything. When I walked through the front door, Carter was already in the hallway. He didn't say a word. He just took my bag from my shoulder, led me to the kitchen, and sat me down. At the island, he placed a glass of water and 2 aspirin in front of me. She called, he asked, his voice low and steady. Carter was the anchor to my storm. While I was frantic energy and logistics, he was stillness and precision. She wants $100,000, I whispered, staring at the water. For the wedding. She accused me of embezzling the inheritance to start the company. She said August told her I hid the money. Carter stopped chopping vegetables for the salad he was making. He set the knife down very carefully. He turned to face me, leaning against the counter, his expression unreadable to anyone who didn't know him. But I saw the flicker of ice in his eyes. August, Carter repeated the name as if tasting something spoiled. He's been in the picture, 16 weeks? And suddenly he's an expert on a probate case from 15 years ago. She threatened to ruin me, Carter. She said she'd tell everyone I'm a thief. I finally looked up at him, feeling the tears prickling at the corners of my eyes. I raised her. When Mom and Dad died, I was 24. She was 11. I didn't date. I didn't travel. I worked. I worked 18-hour days to make sure she didn't feel the loss of that financial safety net. And now. Carter walked around the island and wrapped his arms around me. I buried my face in his chest, smelling the familiar scent of sandalwood and old paper. She's not thinking clearly, Sophie. She's being fed a narrative. Narcissists don't like hearing no. And August? August strikes me as someone who really hates hearing no. For the next 2 days, the silence from Isabella was deafening. I expected a barrage of texts, social media blasts, maybe even a brick through my window. Instead, nothing. It was terrifying. I went to work, checked the accounts, double-checked the old estate files just to soothe my own paranoia, and waited for the other shoe to drop. Then on Friday afternoon, the deadline she had set, my phone pinged. It was a text from Isabella. I'm sorry, I overreacted. The stress of the wedding is getting to me, and I took it out on you. I don't want to fight. Please, can we just have a casual dinner? Just us, you and Carter? I want you to meet August properly. We want to apologize. 7 p.m. at the Ridley. Please, Sophie, you're my only family. I read the text out loud to Carter in my office. He was sitting on the leather sofa, reviewing a thick stack of documents he had brought from his own office. Carter was a forensic accountant, a man who spent his days hunting down hidden assets for federal investigations and high-stakes divorce cases. To the family, he was just an accountant. Boring Carter, Isabella used to call him. He looked up from the file, pushing his glasses up his nose. The Ridley, that's an expensive peace offering. She says she wants to apologize, I said, feeling a desperate, pathetic flare of hope. Maybe she realized she was being crazy. Maybe August isn't as bad as we think. Carter stood up, closing the folder he was holding. He didn't look convinced. In fact, he looked like he was preparing for a siege. Or maybe she realizes that threats don't work on you, so she's trying a different angle. Charm. Should we go? I asked. Carter walked over to the window, looking out at the truck yard below. Yes, we'll go, but we aren't going to a casual dinner, Sophie. We're going to a fact-finding mission. He turned back to me, a small, grim smile playing on his lips. And I'm going to bring my work bag, just in case. Why? I asked, confused. Because, he said, tapping the folder he had just closed, Isabella and August have spent the last week digging into your life. It's only polite if I return the favor. I looked at him, really looked at him. They saw Carter as just the quiet husband who nodded along at family barbecues, the boring man who crunched numbers. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. You don't hunt financial predators for a living without learning how to set a trap of your own. To understand why Isabella's betrayal shattered me, you have to understand what we survived together. When the state troopers knocked on our door that rainy November night 15 years ago, I ceased being a sister and became a parent. Isabella was a grief-stricken child who refused to sleep unless I was in the room. I spent my 20s navigating grief counseling, PTA meetings, and the terrifying reality of running a household while trying to get a logistics brokerage off the ground. I shielded her from everything. When the estate taxes took a huge chunk of the life insurance, I didn't tell her. I just worked harder. When the market crashed and I almost lost the house, I took out loans in my name so she wouldn't have to change schools. I wanted her to have the childhood I lost. I created a bubble where money appeared by magic, where problems were solved before she even knew they existed. I created a monster. I realized this as W. E walked into the Ridley. The restaurant was dimly lit, smelling of truffle oil and expensive cologne. We were led to a private room in the back, not a casual table in the main dining area, but a secluded space with heavy velvet curtains. Isabella was already there, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first car. But my eyes were immediately drawn to the man sitting next to her. August. He stood up as we entered, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. He was handsome in a generic, televised way, perfectly coiffed hair, a tailored suit that was slightly too shiny, and a watch that was aggressively large. He looked like a man playing the role of a millionaire in a low-budget movie. "Sophie, Carter," Isabella beamed, rushing over to hug me. The hug felt brittle, performative. "I'm so glad you came. I felt terrible about our call." "It's fine, Bella," I lied, my body stiff. "We just want to move past it." "Of course," August said, his voice smooth and deep. He reached out to shake my hand. His grip was moist and lingering. "I've heard so much about the legendary big sister, the tycoon." "I own a trucking company, August. I'm hardly a tycoon," I said, pulling my hand away. "Modesty is a virtue," he chuckled, gesturing for us to sit. "But seriously, Bella tells me you built the whole thing from scratch. That takes capital, significant capital." We hadn't even ordered drinks, and he was already talking about money. As we sat, I noticed Carter place his leather satchel on the floor next to his chair, positioning it so it was touching his leg. He didn't engage in the small talk. He just watched August. "So, August," Carter said, his voice mild. "Isabella says you're an entrepreneur. What line of work are you in?" August leaned back, draping his arm over Isabella's shoulders possessively. "A bit of everything, mate. Real estate development mostly. Crypto markets. I specialize in leveraging distressed assets, helping people realize the value of what they already own but can't see." "Fascinating," Carter said, his face a mask of polite boredom. "Distressed assets." "Exactly," August said, his eyes locking onto mine. There was a hunger there that made my skin crawl. "People often sit on gold mines and act like they're poor. It's a tragedy, really. Take Bella here. She has such potential, but she's been held back, made to feel small." Isabella looked down at the table, playing the victim perfectly. "August thinks I have a good eye for interior design. He wants to help me start a firm." "And the wedding?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation grounded. "Is that part of the business plan?" August laughed, a short, barking sound. "The wedding is a statement, Sophie. In my world, image is currency. We need to launch our life together with the right optics. A casual backyard ceremony tells the world we're small time. A black tie event at the villa tells the world we've arrived." "And who is paying for this arrival?" I asked. August's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. "Family supports family, right? That's what Bella told me. She said her sister would do anything for her, unless, of course, there was a reason she couldn't." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, invading my personal space. "You know, I took the liberty of looking up your company's public filings, Sophie. Revenue is up 40% year-over-year. Impressive. Very impressive for someone who claims they can't help their little sister." "Revenue isn't profit, August," I said, my voice hardening. "And my company's finances are none of your business." "Aren't they?" He glanced at Isabella. "Bella, honey, why don't you tell her the good news?" Isabella looked up, her eyes shining with a manic sort of excitement. "August found a lawyer, Sophie, a specialist in estate law. He looked at Mom and Dad's old will. My stomach dropped. What? We know, Isabella said, her voice dropping to a whisper that was meant to be dramatic but just sounded rehearsed. We know you forged the executor sign-off. We know you kept the offshore accounts for yourself. I stared at her, genuinely baffled. Offshore accounts? Bella, Mom was a school teacher. Dad managed a hardware store. There were no offshore accounts. Don't lie to her. August slammed his hand on the table, shattering the veneer of politeness. We know what you did, and tonight isn't just a dinner, Sophie, it's an intervention. August snapped his fingers. From the hallway, 3 men in dark suits walked in. They didn't look like waiters. They were carrying briefcases. They filed into the small private room, surrounding our table like sharks circling a life raft. Gentlemen, August said, leaning back with a smug grin, please show Sophie the paperwork. I looked at Carter. He hadn't moved. He hadn't flinched. He was just watching August with the intense, predatory focus of a cat watching a mouse that was about to make a fatal mistake. The sea. Lens in the room was heavy, suffocating, broken only by the sharp snap of latches as the 3 men opened their briefcases in unison. It was a choreographed move, designed to intimidate, to make me feel small and cornered. One of the men, a balding figure with a complexion the color of oatmeal and a suit that fit him like a shroud, slid a thick stack of documents across the white tablecloth. He didn't introduce himself. He just pointed a manicured finger at the signature line on the top page. Ms. Bennett, the man said, his voice raspy, like he'd spent a lifetime smoking cheap cigarettes. We represent the suppressed interests of the Bennett family estate. Specifically, the assets you failed to disclose during the probate period following your parents' passing. I looked down at the paper. It was a draft for a lawsuit. Isabella Bennett v. Sophie Bennett. The header screamed, civil complaint for fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. We are prepared to file this with the Superior Court tomorrow morning, the lawyer continued, his eyes devoid of any human spark. Unless, of course, you agree to an immediate settlement. We've calculated the hidden assets, plus interest and punitive damages, to be in the realm of $5 million. However, in the interest of family harmony. He paused, flashing a wet, repulsive smile. Isabella is willing to accept a lump sum transfer of $2 million. Tonight. I felt the blood drain from my face. $2 million. It would cripple the company. We were cash flow positive, but we operated on thin margins with high overhead. Pulling that kind of liquidity would mean defaulting on vendor payments, missing payroll, and essentially bankrupting the business I had spent 15 years bleeding for. This is insane, I whispered, flipping through the pages. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of the lies printed there. Paragraph 4, secret accounts in the Cayman Islands, hidden real estate holdings in Florida. My parents didn't even have passports. August. They went to Disney World once in 1998. Denial is the first stage, August said, swirling the red wine in his glass. He looked relaxed, almost bored, like a king watching a jester perform. The forensic trail is clear, Sophie. You moved the money through shell companies. We have proof. Show me, I challenged, my voice gaining a razor edge. Show me the proof. Show me the bank transfers. Show me the account numbers. That will all be revealed in discovery, the lawyer interjected smoothly. Once this goes public, once your vendors find out you're being sued for fraud, once your bank freezes your lines of credit pending an investigation. Imagine what that will do to your reputation, Ms. Bennett. The industry is small. Word travels fast. The threat hung in the air, toxic and undeniable. They weren't banking on winning in court. They were banking on the fact that I couldn't afford the fight. They were weaponizing my own success against me. Isabella was staring at her plate, pushing a scallop around with her fork. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Bella, I said, my voice cracking. Look at me. Do you really believe this? Do you really think I stole from you? August showed me the spreadsheets, Sophie, she mumbled, still not looking up. The numbers don't add up. You have a mansion, you have the trucks, I have nothing. It's not fair. I have a mortgage, I snapped, and I have debt, and I work 80 hours a week. Sign the papers, Sophie, August interrupted, his voice dropping the playful facade. It was hard now, commanding. Sign the settlement agreement, transfer the funds, or I destroy everything you built. I'll make sure you end up in a cell. I looked at the document again. The settlement agreement was simple. A single page. I, Sophie Bennett, admit to mishandling estate funds. It was a confession. If I signed this, they would own me forever. I felt a sudden, cold clarity wash over me. The panic receded, replaced by the analytical mind that managed international shipping lanes and complex logistics. I looked at the lawyer. I looked at his cheap shoes. I looked at the frayed cuffs of his shirt. High-powered attorneys representing multi-million-dollar fraud cases didn't wear polyester blends. And then I looked at Carter. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. He was just watching, his eyes darting from the documents to the men, processing, calculating. He caught my gaze, and for the first time all night, he gave me a nearly imperceptible nod. He reached down and picked up his leather bag. The sound of the heavy zipper opening was loud in the quiet room. I think, I said, sitting up straighter, my voice steady and cool, that before we discuss settlements, we need to discuss jurisdiction. August frowned. What are you talking about? I'm talking about due diligence, I said, channeling every ounce of authority I used in board. Room negotiations. You claimed you looked into my filings, but you missed something very important. And what is that? August sneered. You missed my husband, I said. Carter placed a single, thin manila folder on the table. It wasn't thick like their lawsuit draft. It was precise, streamlined, deadly. Gentlemen, Carter said, his voice soft but carrying a terrifying weight. I'm looking at your complaint here. It's very well typed, but I'm having a hard time finding your names in the State Bar Association directory. The lead lawyer stiffened. We are retained as consultants from out of state. The lead counsel is. Stop, Carter said. He didn't shout. He just held up a hand, and the man stopped talking instantly. I don't care about your script. I care about the fact that you are attempting to extort a federal witness. August laughed, but it sounded forced. Federal witness, please. She runs a trucking company. I'm not talking about Sophie, Carter said, turning his gaze slowly to August. I'm talking about myself. August blinked. You're an accountant, you do tax returns. I am a forensic accountant for the Department of Justice, Carter corrected him, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. I specialize in wire fraud, asset recovery, and complex Ponzi schemes. And when my wife told me her sister's new fiancé was demanding large sums of untraceable cash, I got curious. I took the liberty of running a background check, not the Google kind, the kind that requires a clearance. Carter opened his folder. He pulled out a single photograph. It was a mugshot. The man in the photo was younger, minus the expensive haircut, but it was undeniably August. This is Arthur Penhaligon, Carter said, sliding the photo across the table so it stopped right in front of Isabella. Arrested 4 years ago in Florida for selling non-existent condos to retirees. He served 18 months, released on parole. Currently wanted for questioning regarding a cryptocurrency investment club in Nevada that vanished with $3 million of client funds. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the service station down the hall. Isabella stared at the photo. Her hand trembled as she reached for it, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the glossy paper. That's not him, Isabella whispered, her voice shaking. August, tell them it's a fake. August's face had gone from smug to a shade of violent red. The vein in his forehead was throbbing. This is ridiculous, he spat, standing up so abruptly his chair tipped over. You think you can come here and slander me with Photoshop? I'll sue you for defamation. Sit down, Arthur, Carter said. He didn't move, but the command whipped through the air like a lash. I'm not done. Carter turned his attention to the 3 lawyers. They were exchanging nervous glances. The man in the oatmeal suit was sweating profusely now, a bead trickling down his temple. "And you three," Carter continued, consulting a sheet of paper in his folder. "I recognize you. You're not lawyers. You, sir, are distinctively Mr. Gerald Finch. You run a notary service out of a strip mall in Jersey City. And your two associates. I believe I saw you in the background of one of Arthur's old promotional videos for the Gold Horizon scheme. Actors, or just accomplices?" "We're leaving," Mr. Finch blurted out. He grabbed his briefcase, his hands fumbling with the latch. "We didn't know anything about federal. We were just hired to deliver a message." "Sit down," August roared at them. "You leave when I say you leave." "No, actually," I interrupted, standing up slowly. The fear was gone now, replaced by a cold, burning fury that radiated from my chest. "You leave when we say you leave, because right now you're all attempting to commit felony extortion, and my husband is recording this entire conversation." I pointed to Carter's phone, which was face down on the table, the small red light pulsing rhythmically. August looked at the phone, then at me. The charm was completely gone, his face twisted into a mask of pure malice. "You think you're so smart, Sophie. You think you can just wave a badge and scare me? Isabella is with me. She knows who I am. She knows I'm trying to get her what she deserves." He turned to Isabella, grabbing her arm. "Bella, baby, don't listen to them. They're lying. They're trying to separate us because they want to keep the money. They're jealous of our love. They're jealous of what we're going to build." Isabella looked up at him, her eyes wide and wet with tears. She looked at the mugshot on the table. She looked at the terrified lawyers. And then she looked at me. For a moment, I thought she was going to wake up. I thought the spell was broken. "He's lying, isn't he, Bella?" August whispered urgently, squeezing her arm. "Tell your sister to cut the check so we can leave." Isabella took a shaky breath. She looked at me, her chin trembling. "Sophie, why are you doing this? Why did you have to bring fake photos? Why can't you just be happy for me?" My heart shattered. Even with the truth staring her in the face, she chose him. She chose the fantasy. "I'm not doing this to hurt you, Bella," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm doing this to save you." "Save me?" she screamed, wrenching her arm away from August, but not to leave him to defend him. She stood up, knocking her wine glass over. The red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like a wound. "You've controlled my whole life. Do this, Bella. Don't spend that, Bella. Get a job, Bella. You treat me like a child. August treats me like a queen." "He treats you like a mark," I shouted back, losing my composure for the first time. "He doesn't love you, Bella. He loves the trust fund he thinks you have. He thinks you're rich." "I am rich," she yelled. "Or I would be if you hadn't stolen it." August stepped in front of her, shielding her from me. He was smiling again, a cruel, triumphant smile. He saw that he still had her. "You see, Sophie, you can't break us. Now, here's the reality. You're going to transfer that money, not because of the lawsuit, but because if you don't, Bella is going to cut you out of her life forever. No phone calls, no holidays. You'll never see your nieces or nephews when we have them. You will die alone with your money and your boring husband." He leaned in close, his breath smelling of stale wine and malice. "Is 100 grand really worth losing your only sister?" It was the ultimate leverage. He knew my weakness wasn't money, it was family. He was holding my love for her hostage. I looked at Isabella. She was sobbing, hiding her face in August's shoulder. She looked so small, so broken. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. "You're right, August. Family is everything." I turned to Carter. "Give him the rest." Carter sighed. It was a sound of deep resignation. He reached into the folder again. "We were hoping it wouldn't come to this," he said quietly. "We were hoping the mugshot would be enough." He pulled out a stapled document. It wasn't a police record. It was a marriage certificate. "Arthur Penhaligon," Carter read, "married to Magda Kowalski in Las Vegas, 2018. No record of divorce." August froze. Carter pulled out another document. "And here is a sworn affidavit from Magda. She says you're still legally married. She also mentions that you have a 6-year-old son in Reno that you haven't paid child support for in 2 years. She's very eager to speak with you. In fact, she's the one who gave us your current phone number. Isabella stopped crying. She pulled her head away from Auguste's shoulder. What? And this, Carter said, pulling out a final, thick stack of papers, is the most interesting part. It's a bank statement. Yours, Arthur. Or rather, the account you opened in Isabella's name 3 weeks ago. Carter slid the papers toward Isabella. Look at the transactions, Bella. Isabella picked up the statement with trembling hands. Credit line, $50,000, cash advance, casino withdrawal. She looked up, her face pale as a ghost. I didn't open this account. No, Carter said. He did, using your social security number. He's already maxed out a credit line in your name, Bella. He's not waiting for the wedding money. He's already stealing from you. Auguste looked around the room. The 3 lawyers were gone. They had slipped out the door while we were arguing. He was alone. It's a joint account, Auguste stammered, backing away toward the door. I was investing it for us, for our future. You spent $12,000 at a strip club in Atlantic City last Tuesday. Isabella screamed, reading the line item. You told me you were at a meditation retreat. Bella, listen. Auguste reached for her, but she recoiled as if he were made of fire. Don't touch me, she shrieked. The denial was gone. The fantasy had evaporated, leaving only the cold, hard horror of reality. She looked at the man she was going to marry, and for the first time, she saw the predator beneath the skin. It gets worse, Carter said, standing up and blocking the door. He wasn't a physically imposing man, but in that moment, he looked like a wall of granite. I made a call before we came in. There are 2 detectives from the fraud division waiting in the lobby. They have a warrant for Arthur Penhaligon. Auguste's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. He looked at the window. We were on the 2nd floor. He looked at Carter. He looked at me. You set me up, he hissed. No, I said, stepping forward to stand next to my husband. You set yourself up the moment you threatened my family. You thought I was a soft target because I'm a woman who loves her sister. You forgot that I'm also a CEO who deals with liars and thieves for a living. ND, you definitely forgot to check who I was married to. Auguste lunged. Auguste's lunge wasn't a coordinated attack. It was a desperate, flailing attempt to bulldoze his way through the only obstacle between him and freedom. He threw his entire body weight against Carter, aiming to knock him aside and reach the door. But he had severely underestimated my husband. Carter didn't panic. He didn't shout. He simply shifted his weight, pivoting on his back foot with the grace of someone who had spent years training for moments exactly like this. As Auguste collided with him, Carter used the momentum against him, grabbing Auguste's expensive suit jacket and guiding him hard into the doorframe. Crash! The impact was bone-rattling. The heavy oak door splintered outward, and the 2 men tumbled into the hallway, spilling out into the view of the main dining room. Get off me, Auguste screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. Help, he's assaulting me, call the police. Diners dropped their forks. Conversations halted instantly. The refined atmosphere of the Ridley shattered as Auguste scrambled to his feet, his shirt torn, his hair wild. He looked around at the sea of shocked faces, wealthy patrons, waiters holding trays of champagne, the maitre d' frozen in horror, and tried to play the victim one last time. This man is crazy, Auguste yelled, pointing a shaking finger at Carter, who was calmly dusting off his knees. He's trying to kill me. Someone help. I stepped out of the private room, my heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. No one is going to help you, Arthur, I said, my voice projecting clearly across the silent restaurant. Auguste spun around, his eyes wide. Don't call me that, my name is Auguste, and you, he pointed at me, you're in on it, you're trying to frame me. Then Isabella stepped out. She looked like a ghost. Her makeup was smeared, her hands were clutching the bank statements Carter had given her, but her eyes were focused. She stared at the man she had planned to marry, the man she had defended against her own flesh and blood. "Bella," August gasped, seeing her. He switched tactics instantly, his face crumbling into a mask of pathetic desperation. He reached out to her, ignoring the crowd watching us. "Bella, baby, tell them who I am. Tell them we're in love. Don't let them do this to us." Isabella walked forward slowly. The room was so quiet you could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning. She stopped 3 feet from him. "You're right," she said, her voice trembling but gaining strength with every word. "I should tell them who you are." She raised the papers in her hand. "He's not August," she announced to the room, her voice breaking with grief and rage. "He's a thief. He stole my identity, he stole my money, and he tried to destroy my family." "Bella, no," August whimpered. "And," she continued, reaching into her purse. She pulled out the engagement ring, a gaudy, oversized diamond that we now knew was likely bought with stolen funds or was a complete fake. "You forgot something." She threw the ring. It hit him square in the chest and bounced onto the floor with a hollow clink. "I never want to see you again," she spat. Before August could respond, the heavy double doors at the front of the restaurant swung open. The 2 detectives Carter had called didn't need to be pointed in the right direction. They marched through the dining room, their badges visible on their belts. August saw them. Ideally, he would have surrendered. Instead, he made one final, stupid decision. He grabbed a steak knife from the nearest empty table and backed up against the wall. "Stay back," he screamed, waving the serrated blade. "I'm not going back to jail." The room erupted in screams. Patrons scrambled under tables. Carter didn't hesitate. While the detectives were drawing their weapons, shouting, "Drop the knife," Carter moved. He picked up a heavy silver ice bucket from a waiter's station and, with the precision of a pitcher, hurled it. It struck August's wrist with a sickening thud. The knife clattered to the floor. August howled in pain, clutching his hand. The detectives were on him in seconds. "Arthur Penhaligon, you are under arrest." They slammed him against the wall, cuffing his hands behind his back. As they dragged him out, kicking and screaming obscenities, he passed by me. He looked me in the eye, his face twisted with pure hatred. "You're a witch," he screamed. "You ruined everything." I didn't flinch. I just stood next to my husband and my sister. "No, Arthur," I said calmly. "I just balanced the books." The restaurant remained silent for a long beat after the doors closed behind him. Then, slowly, the maitre d' approached us. "Ms. Bennett," he whispered, looking terrified. I'm so sorry. Is everyone all right?" I looked at Isabella. She was shaking uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was fading. I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. She collapsed into me, sobbing into my shoulder, the weight of the betrayal finally crushing her. "We're leaving," I said softly. "Please put the damages on my tab." The fallout was swift, brutal, and entirely necessary. We didn't go back to Isabella's condo. It was a crime scene now, filled with evidence of Arthur's fraud. We went back to my house. Carter spent the next 6 hours on the phone, coordinating with the detectives, the bank, and his contacts at the DOJ. Isabella sat on my couch wrapped in a blanket, staring into the fireplace. She didn't speak for a long time. She just drank the tea I made her and shivered, despite the warmth of the room. Around 3:00 a.m., Carter finally came into the living room. He looked exhausted, rubbing his eyes under his glasses. "It's done," he said, sitting down in the armchair opposite us. "Magda, his legal wife, is flying in to testify. The 3 lawyers were picked up an hour ago at a motel near the airport. Turns out, they were small-time grifters Arthur hired off a gig website. They rolled on him immediately to cut a deal." "And the money?" Isabella asked, her voice a croak. "The $50,000 on my credit line." Carter leaned forward. "Because we caught him so quickly, and because we have proof of identity theft, the bank is flagging the transactions as fraudulent. You won't be liable for the debt, Bella. It might take a few months to scrub your credit report clean, but you aren't bankrupt." Isabella let out a long, shuddering breath. She closed her eyes, fresh tears leaking out. "I was so stupid," she whispered. "I was so stupid." "Yes," I said. Carter looked at me, a warning in his eyes, but I shook my head. I sat down next to her and took her hand. "You were stupid, Bella," I repeated firmly. "You let your desire for a lifestyle you didn't earn blind you to reality. You let a stranger convince you that your own sister was your enemy." Isabella flinched, but she didn't pull away. "I know, I'm so sorry, Sophie. He just said everything I wanted to hear. He made me feel special. And you're always so perfect, so successful. I just wanted to win for once." "I'm not perfect," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'm just careful, and I'm successful because I don't look for shortcuts. You wanted the wedding, the status, the optics, as August called it. But you didn't look at the man, you didn't look at the cost." "I almost sued you," she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "I brought lawyers to dinner to extort you. How can you ever forgive me?" I looked at Carter. He smiled, a tired, warm smile that told me everything I needed to know. We were a team, and part of being a team meant cleaning up the mess, even when it wasn't ours. "Because you're my sister," I said, pulling her into a hug. "And because our parents would never forgive me if I let you drown. But this is it, Bella. This is the last bailout. You're going to therapy. You're getting a real job, no more startups, no more interior design fantasies. You start at the bottom and you work your way up, just like I did." She nodded against my shoulder. "Okay, I will, I promise." Over the next few months, justice was served cold and hard. Arthur, or August, was denied bail due to being a flight risk. The sheer volume of evidence Carter had compiled was overwhelming. He eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts of wire fraud, identity theft, and extortion. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. The lawyers got probation and community service in exchange for their testimony. Isabella moved into my guest room for a while. It wasn't easy. There were days when the tension was high, when the guilt ate at her, or when my resentment flared up. But she kept her promise. She got a job as an administrative assistant at a dental office, hardly glamorous, but it was honest work. She started paying her own bills. She started seeing a therapist to understand why she was so susceptible to manipulation. And me, I went back to work. The logistics business kept moving, trucks rolling across the country, supply chains connecting the world. But I made a change. I stopped working 18-hour days. I started coming home for dinner at 6:00 p.m. One evening, about 6 months after the arrest, Carter and I were sitting on the back porch, watching the sun go down. He had his laptop open, working on a new case, and I was reading a book. "You know," I said, breaking the silence, "I never really asked you how you found all that stuff on August so fast. The marriage certificate, the child support." Carter didn't look up from his screen, but I saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "I told you, Sophie, I'm a forensic accountant." "You're not just an accountant," I said, reaching over to close his laptop. "You're my ace in the hole." He looked at me, his eyes crinkling behind his glasses. "I'm just a husband who doesn't like bullies threatening his wife." I smiled, leaning in. To kiss him, they had tried to ruin me with documents and lies. They had tried to break my family apart for a payday, but they had made one fatal miscalculation. They brought lawyers to a dinner. I brought the truth. And in the end, the truth didn't just set us free, it shut everything down.